All righty.
I don't know how we want to run this. I unfortunately have not had time or ability to, I hadn't printed the copies of much, but as far as I saw, our meeting minutes weren't that much to go over. But do we want to, Diane, do you want to start? And Diane,
Yes, let me go ahead and share this bad boy here.
okay.
Where's my share button now?
What minutes do we have to go over if we haven't met in over a year?
Minutes that are a year old.
I thought they were from last February or whatever, right? I'm looking.
Okay, I'll admit I don't remember anything we talked about.
Greg, can we officially call the meeting to order?
Okay, yes. It's at 3:20 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order of the ICI Self-Haul Subcommittee.
Awesome.
And I want to thank y'all for changing the name because SLS means sodium lauryl sulfate to me, and it threw me off all the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Diane, it's showing gray on my end.
Yeah, I see.
Okay.
It looks like it's blocked somehow. I can see underneath a little bit.
Can you hear them? So, right, I don't think they'll hear it.
All I have is a teeny tiny little screen.
Are you on two screens, Diane, or one?
Oops. Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Do you have two screens in front of you or just one?
Just, let's
Yeah.
see. Okay, let me see this. Let's do this. Can you see anything now?
Something came up, then it went away. Something's up, now it's gone. You had a half a second.
Had you shared the application or your screen? Because there's a difference.
Yes. Let me. There we go.
Now we're back to seeing us all bigger pictures.
Okay. Now let me see here. Share. It says I'm sharing Microsoft Word. Do you guys see anything?
Yes, can you maximize it?
Yes. Yay. Woo-hoo.
Cool.
Okay.
All right. I have to get used to that. All right. What this is the January 15th, 2020 minutes. You guys need to take a look at those.
They were mailed out in a packet. Actually, twice. There was 2 emails that were duplicative this time. And
yes.
So, but they both were the same. I was on the different subcommittee at the time, so I can't comment on the minutes other than to say I read them and they look like I don't see any grave spelling errors. But.
So if we have
I mean, it seems like it's pretty straightforward and uncontroversial, so I'm willing to assume it's accurate.
Okay.
Doesn't seem to be any harm, and if it's slightly off, I don't see where there'd be any harm in it.
So we get a motion to approve it?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. Did somebody move to accept them?
Not yet.
I will. I move that we accept the minutes from January the 15th of 2020.
I don't feel comfortable seconding because I wasn't there, so I think somebody else.
Right.
Second.
There.
I'll second.
Okay, Brian and or Kendrick seconded.
Okay,
Me, okay,
thank you. Yay, we can take that off. Boom. Let's see.
You've
Did it all
accomplished
come
more
up?
than we have in a year.
Did it all come up gray again?
Black, but yeah.
It's black.
So Greg, right now we have a motion and we have a second. We just need to vote.
oh, I'm sorry, thank you, yes. So we have a motion and a second, all in favor of approving the minutes from last January?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None so, meetings from January 20th, 20 are approved. Next item.
Okay. Can you guys see anything yet?
It says
Still
view,
dark.
but there's nothing up.
I think if you're trying to share the PowerPoint, you're gonna have to unshare again and share that application because you shared Word.
Yes. Do you guys see anything?
Now it's
Yes.
coming. Yeah,
Yay.
looks like a PowerPoint slide. Okay,
Okay. Can you guys read it okay?
yes,
Yes.
Oh, good. So we approve the minutes and, let's see here. Wait, where'd the agenda go? There's the agenda. So, the next thing to do is the solid waste recommendations to discuss. That's what was on the agenda was discussing, or the minutes from last time is discussing some 4 points of the recommendations.
I guess, can we pull them up to look at them? And yeah,
Mhm. This is all of them, just in case that you guys need to review it. I'm going to flip through. Hang on for me just a second. And this is the ones that were discussed.
As our priorities.
Yes, that were listed at least in the minutes. So that doesn't mean that you still have to stick with that, I don't think, but that's just what was listed.
Yeah, I think Bruce Burrow had made a point that we could discuss all of the recommendations again in case points of view have changed because of COVID and everything that has happened over the course of the year. And then we noticed in the minutes from last time that that this subcommittee had already picked some to focus on, but I think part of today's discussion can make sure that we're still on that same track or want to be on that same track.
You know, my thought is, I bet I'm not the only one who doesn't even care anymore what we work on as long as we just get something accomplished. But I am very open to changing what it is we work on, but I just think everybody wants to get something done.
Okay.
Feedback, anybody else? Am I correct?
yeah. My recollection is we did sort of pros and cons and how hard it would be to get done versus what was the value that would come out of it. So we spent that time, but to tell you the truth, since I wasn't on I was on a different subcommittee for a while, and since it's been so long, I can't remember how happy we all were with it. And I guess I'm not sure what may have changed in the last 13 months that would make us want to do something different.
Diane, if you can go to the impact matrix,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Looks like some of them disappeared.
They did. Oops, hang on.
There.
This is all of them. I'm sorry. This is all of them. And this, like I said before, this is just the few that were discussed. So so that's all of them.
Let's leave it right there for just a second.
Yes.
So if I remember correctly, we had started talking about the standards and signage, and part of that was due to like just seeing what facilities we were kind of in the research phase when we stopped this on like seeing like listing all the facilities and seeing what they take and seeing if there was a way to standardize that, because any kind of technical assistance, marketing, education, etc., we would need to know those things to be able to like put out signage and put out flyers and, you know, emails and newsletter. You know, we needed to have the background information. If we're going to try to educate people on where they can take their stuff, we need to know, you know, what all the facilities in the county are accepting. And that's kind of where we, you know, where we left off, if I remember correctly, from 13 months ago.
I forgot about that, but Ted's right, that we were looking at the disparities between who collects what and how to navigate that with the different audiences who, you know, sometimes people don't even know what zip code they live in, much less who's collecting their stuff, you know?
Yeah, I think that was part of the separation requirement, was it not? Because we had the standards for signage and adequate infrastructure for ICI, and we had completed that proposal. And then I think that we were talking about self-haul facilities.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we was talking about, well, what's available to people.
Yeah.
If I remember right. And I'm not sure. I think Rob Lush actually was leading this group, or at least one of them, half of it. And by the way, Rob has moved to clean collaborator position, so he's no longer in the solid waste supervisor position with me. But I'm not sure that we ever got back to that. Excuse me?
What's the clean collaborator position?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wondered that too.
Well, Metro approved about $1.5 million for equipment and people just to do litter. So I think his job is going to be coordinating all the different agencies that do litter, like Brightside, Swims, Public Works, vacant lots, Colton regs and stuff like that, and to try to work on problem issues. But also they've hired they're hiring about 14 people just to do litter along routes, and they bought some equipment that would for the downtown partnership, and they needed to buy some equipment for these crews. So that's what his role is going to be. So
very cool. And I do want to say, Pete, I don't know if he's reached out to you yet. I just thought of it. Brightside has a new executive director. I don't know if y'all knew that.
I just found out.
Yeah, I just found out I don't know 2 weeks ago, and I told him that he needed to start coming to the advisory committee meetings and to the 109 board meetings, because Brightside's presence has, you know, as long as I've been involved with the 109 boards, like Brightside's never been involved, and I think that they should be involved. So I challenged him to reach out to you, gave him your contact information, and told him he should start coming to the meetings.
Good work, Ted.
Thank you. So,
Ted, I wanted to say there was a full paragraph in the minutes that identified what we did at that last meeting, Ted. And you and Sarah Lynn had voted and we had approved those 4 areas. And we had directed the staff to find out what facilities accept in the self-material haul and what separation requirements they have. So I'm like Sarah Lynn. I think if we get started with, you know, kind of where we were, we've already got them identified. So I would be in favor of, if we have the information we ask staff for, that would be the first topic, right? That we had already voted on. The motion was put forth by Ked, seconded by Sarah Lynn. So we're right there. Sarah,
Unless there's something.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I kind of agree, but let me just ask the group that's here, since the metric is up with everything, is everybody okay? Is there something that somebody wants to really bring in or talk about, or is everybody okay going along with what happened and what was agreed on a year ago?
And I think we should ask, did the COVID pandemic, or has the COVID pandemic changed a priority to make it more time sensitive? And unless something like that precludes what we already decided, let's just roll with it, like Brian's saying.
Well, if I
I
may,
don't want to interrupt here, but my comment, and Karen paraphrased it very accurately, but there was a bit left out. I think we also need to look at the commodity market pricing to see in comparison what the value of material is, how it's going to impact our program whenever we're rolling it out, and the balance of the majority of recyclables at the curb versus at commercial establishments now. So it's kind of been a whole shift in the recycling industry. And all I would ask is that you would keep that in mind.
Okay.
if I could, I'd kind of like to look at a few of these recommendations and kind of give you guys some updates as to what we've been doing in some of these. First, two of them, the enhanced enforcement of yard waste on there. The board has actually hired an enforcement officer that is going to, for doing those things, it's kind of like an education enforcement officer. And we're using them in a sense, it's what's called a Recycle Right program, which is a curbside tagging program that we could talk a little bit about, at another meeting. But we're kind of piloting how we would do things, and it's the way that's kind of rolled out is that we select an area. You have people go through, look at the containers to see what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong. If they're doing great, they get a green tag, says way to know. If they have some contamination in there, they give a yellow tag, the oops tag, and to say that, hey, you're doing fine, but you've got these items that, you shouldn't put in there. And then there's a red tag, which means don't pick it up. This is basically garbage. Karen and Diane can talk to it a whole lot better than I, but it's been fairly successful so far in reducing contamination. So we're getting some learnings there. So we kind of see that as rolling into this enhanced enforcement, although it's really enhanced education as much as anything else at the moment. So those two things, just keep in mind that we're moving in that direction. Another thing is the separation requirements and service level standards for self-haul facilities. While we haven't been able to do much of that, we do have quite a bit of separation that goes on already. But in the spirit of doing that, that's when we started to do the pop-up drop-offs. And the pop-up drop-offs, we've done 3 of those in the past year. And the focus of those has went from a junk pickup drop off, like out at the landfill, to recovery. And whereas self hauls had during the study, we found it to only have a 7% recovery. Right now, with those pop up drop offs, 3 of them, we're getting about 40% recovery. So this is because we're trying to get people to separate it as they come to the events. Now, this is an event. There'll be 9 of them. And I think that we can take care of a lot of residential self-haul in this manner. So that is something that we have been working at with the separation requirement. It was kind of like a modified version of what they're trying to do there. So we would want to make sure that this group gets a good idea of how that's going before they really make decisions in the self-haul stuff. But we can still get an idea of where material goes and what that material is. Technical assistance, ICI sector.
Can I ask a question on that?
Sure.
I've read about it a little bit and what you guys are doing, but all I've heard about is for the recycling. But our 2 bullets are for yard waste. So is there any effort on going around judging the yard waste or not?
We have not started at it, number one, because we're in the dead of winter. But number 2, I think we're we're piloting the process as much as anything. And the longer term goal is to get something where we have a crew that we hire that will go out with that enforcement officer to do the education first process. Obviously, we already have the ordinances in place on the yard waste. That's the reason that the board kind of went through and did that. But yeah, we have everything in place to do that, and we're starting slow, and there'll be more information and get feedback from you guys as we move forward with that. Did that answer your question, Greg?
Yeah, and that's good. I understand. Our two bullets were on yard waste, so I wanted to make sure that was separate.
So the technical assistance and expanded, let me talk about technical assistance. The board also hired a Diane, and Diane's strength is actually going to and working with people. And it's our goal that when we get past COVID, that we're going to have somebody that's going to be able to do this technical assistance for ICI and stuff. So we've always done it, but we've never been able to be somebody that's going after it. So we get people that want that. They call us. We do it. This would be going out and getting new recycling to go to a business that would, that we would help with them to understand what their waste stream is and what their opportunities for recovery are, and that type of stuff.
Proactive versus reactive.
Yeah, to set up a recycling program in their business. So that's what we want to get to. We just haven't been able to do that either. And a lot of these things are things that have not been fully developed. So we're basing them loosely on what these recommendations are. Let's see.
So Pete, can I jump in here for a second? It seems like that staff, at the direction of 109 board has made some good strides on some of these recommendations. So we may need to relook at some of these that are in progress. That if we've got people that are going to be working on the yard waste disposal ban, technical assistance, et cetera, I don't want to strike through those, but I definitely think they should be moved down to a lower priority list. And the things that aren't, there's nothing in progress on them from staff or the 109 board, that we can bump those up to the top of the list for us to start working on. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes, I do want to ask the clarifying question of one of these items in the lower right-hand corner is labeled number 1, and then the upper center, one of them's labeled 3, and there's no 2. Is that just formatting? We can ignore that, right?
Yes, just ignore it.
Okay.
I put them on there to help myself keep track of where they were.
Cool.
Yeah. So Kat, I think that's a good idea. I think what we need to do is kind of give you guys a better understanding of what we've done. It's been a year basically, and staff couldn't just not do things because there's good ideas here. So we've done what we can do. There's nothing mandatory in here, obviously, but we're trying to develop some things. We're not real far along, but I think that we need to get back and let you guys get a lot more detail as to what we're doing before you guys make a decision to say, no, we're going to focus on something else. You guys are doing okay there. Or you might say, might we suggest this?
Or we might say, where does staff think our assistance or input would be most beneficial to making progress?
Yeah. Because with these subcommittees, I've kind of felt that, staff being, mostly Metro employees, a lot of these things are changeable at that level, that these are internal things, and maybe it's hiring a position, things like that, but that's kind of an internal thing, more of an external thing. And this board, we represent the external, parts of the waste industry and recycling community and just green community. That's where our advice is important, is on the things that, you guys as staff can't really enact change easily. And that's where our, advice and experience from outside of how Metro works kind of comes in. So like the yard waste disposal ban, the enforcement, that's not something like, the only enforcement agency is Metro and the waste management district. So like we don't really have a whole lot, to go on from like an advice standpoint. Like the countywide service level standards for self-haul facilities, that's something where outside, help, because we're working with organizations that aren't just Louisville Metro. I think that's where, we as the subcommittee fits in best. Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me. And, to kind of follow up with a little bit of what we're talking about on the other committee, we have been talking about, and I think I saw Sandra here. We were doing the education and outreach for service level standards in residential. And as part of this rollout of recycling carts in the USD, we know that the Department of Public Works is going to have to develop a program that's going to do a whole lot of this. So I think that the committee thought that it might be good for us to kind of use that as a pilot to see how we, get some learnings, to see how we could possibly expand it when it comes to the full committee or the full recommendation. So again, I think getting to your point, Ked, if staff is actually working on a lot of this stuff that we can get learnings from, and as we do, it can expand. I think where the board comes in a little bit more is if there's definitely a regulation that's recommended or an ordinance that's recommended. That's where we really have to get deep. But then bouncing these things off of the industry and community groups and citizens on this committee on how we're doing and suggestions to make it better. Obviously, that's going to work for some of these. Some of them it won't, but we'll just have to see as we go.
And so, I guess like, could I make a motion to ask for you guys to kind of like identify the items on this screen here that are, something is in progress from a staff standpoint. And so that way we can, either you can give us a better update on, exactly what's going on, either written or verbal, either one. And then, highlight the things that nothing's being done on and where we fit in best to kind of like, like we've identified kind of like from a priority standpoint, but, from a work standpoint, I want to make sure, I'm focusing our efforts where it's needed the most.
Yeah, I tend to agree with what you said, Kat. I think if I understood Pete right, if we could get a written summary of what has been done that we might not be aware of, that might help us in our discussions. Those things we don't know about.
Right. I'm sure Diane and Karen can get into the real weeds of some of these things to kind of give you a deep dive, and we can do that. Some of this could definitely be, when we talk about this, combined, like separation requirements, self-haul, and countywide service level standards for self-haul facilities could kind of be combined into the discussion about like the pop-up drop-offs and the learnings there. And do we really need to move forward with making sure that facilities have drop-off sites for normal self-haul material? So yeah, Yeah, we can do that. We can get back with you guys and do a deep dive into what we are doing.
Would it make sense? Would it make sense to flip back to the subset of the stuff that was chosen a year ago? The screen. You know, we can come back to this one too, but I just wanted to look at what was agreed on. Yeah. Okay.
We agreed to these 6 or the 2 lavender ones.
It was these.
Okay.
And yes, and to distinguish it from self-haul and ICI.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So the one for ICI standards and signage, that proposal was actually complete, and it really went into detail if we was going to do this countywide, and it might be in a kind of sense and a little bit of a theme here is that staff is kind of doing this on a micro level as far as kind of been designing things because we have to do stuff while we hadn't been meeting. Bringing that to you guys and letting you see what we're doing, and then you guys can give us feedback and whether or not we want to expand it or however we want to do it, however you guys want to do it.
Pete, did the standards go to the 109 board?
It did.
And that was approved there, right?
Yes, sir.
Since we've changed committees, we should probably have I don't know if does everybody remember that? Just out of
Sort of,
curiosity.
but not very well.
Yeah, maybe we could get a copy of that so we could refamiliarize ourselves with what the 109 board approved.
Well, is it on the website?
No, that is not on the website.
Okay. And how many pages is it?
It's not very long.
I don't know if it could be emailed to the group or sent out or put on the website, perhaps.
It can be emailed.
Okay.
Without a problem.
And I'm just curious, like, what was the logic behind it? Like, so I wasn't there. Like, I noticed on this screen, the enhanced enforcement for ICI of yard waste is there, but the one for self-haul went away. And I think it's the opposite. Separation requirement is there for self-haul, but went away for ICI. Am I correct or not? I'm wondering what was the logic on that.
I'm not sure.
Two screens, I can't.
I'm not sure, Greg.
Okay.
I actually have a question about those. The when it's self-haul and it's an enhanced enforcement, who are we talking about exactly that needs to get the enforcement?
Okay. All right. So now it's becoming clear again.
Okay.
So if you was to establish, as far as the study recommendations, if you was to establish the self-haul requirements, that facilities that accept waste would have to also have a place for people to drop off and sort things that can be recovered. Kind of like a transfer station having garbage, in junk that they accept, they would have to have other separation things there. So if you're going to require them to have those other bins so that you can recover more of that material, then you would have to have enforcement that would ensure that citizens that are using those self-haul facilities, drop-offs, are doing it right. So that would be enforcement to go to these sites to check and watch citizens, making sure that they're not throwing cardboard in with the metal type of a thing. So I think that's where that enforcement was going. Does that answer your question, Karen?
I guess so. So you're saying some of the facilities don't already accept things separately like that?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's kind of like enforcing it's a little too much. First, you have to get them to get the businesses to separate, and then you enforce that they're actually disposing the yard waste correctly.
Yeah, yard waste.
Yeah. And I believe that's where we were at with this, is trying to like wrap our heads around what all facilities are accepting materials that, you know, people drop off. Because, you know, I know of a couple transfer stations that accept, you know, trash and junk. There's the Meriwether drop off, the, you know, different recycling centers. Do we want to consider that self-haul, you know, at the recycling centers, or is that straight recycling? Is that something else? You know, like that was kind of where we were at with this, is I don't think we as a group know enough about, you know, what all options are out there for self-haul to be able to look at, you know, the separation requirements or countywide service level standards yet.
I think the Waste Reduction Center is a perfect example, Kid. Whereas the Waste Reduction Center has a place that you can drop metal now. It has for some time a place where you can drop off your yard waste, a place where you can drop off electronics and tires. But after that, there's not much there. And of the material that's going into the WRC, there's a huge component of it that is recoverable. So it would be developing to where you have a place for people to put all the different commodities and then requiring them to use it. And part of that was also to say that the fees associated with that would have to be in line with disposal. So there wasn't a disincentive to do it.
And last
Any
year,
questions?
real quick, last year when the Waste Reduction Center was closed for some time because of repairs, it was closed for several months. We put a website up with some alternative disposal sites. And that link, I believe, was in the email for this meeting as at least a start. I don't know if it's an exhaustive list, but basically a list for where residents could drop off materials. Now, of course, that's stuff that maybe they normally would have taken to the Waste Reduction Center. It gave them alternative options.
So if I'm cleaning out my basement and I hire somebody to throw my junk into a pickup and get rid of it, are we going to treat that for purposes of discussion here as self-haul or ICI?
That is self-haul.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm gonna take it back. That is, if you is to throw it into the back of your truck and take it, that's self-haul.
Yeah, but if I
Yes.
hire somebody,
If you hire somebody, then no, that's actually ICI. But if it's like a roofer that, you know, they knock out all these shingles, put it into a thing and they haul it, they're considered self-haul. So they kept possession of the material. If you keep possession of the material, it's considered self-haul.
shouldn't we be regulating roofers like a business?
Well, they are regulated like a business, but we don't regulate them like a waste hauler.
Yeah.
Shouldn't we? I mean, they produce a lot of volume that is, as
No.
far as I understand, not
The
always
re-
handled correctly.
The reason we don't need to enforce them like haulers, Sarah Lynn, is like Pete said, is you know, they're disposing of their own materials for one, and for two, the biggest thing about, you know, because it's recycled, so like they wouldn't, even if the waste hauler, like they wouldn't have to pay anything to get licensed. And the reason we license people like that is to make sure we capture that information, and those shingles are being captured for our waste reporting, you know, from the facilities that accept them. So it would add a whole lot of work to try to register the hundreds of you know, small time roofing companies, and we would get no greater benefit of recovery. You know, those materials, it's cheaper to recycle them than it is to landfill them, you know, per ton. So we're already capturing that material as recovery, and we're already getting it from a reporting standpoint. So it would just add a lot of work, and we wouldn't get a lot of benefit from treating them as haulers.
Right on. Thank you.
But do they have to pay to recycle something still?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, even at Meriwether, they have to pay to dump shingles. At the couple of shingle recyclers here in town, they have to pay to dispose of them. But it's markedly cheaper than, the per ton rate at the landfill.
Okay, but it's also, they still got, do we have any problems with them dumping them on the side of the road?
Well, we always have trouble with illegal dumping, but in general, I would say most of the dumping is actually coming from people that are out there for hire with a pickup truck. And we do have some contractors. It's generally not piles of roofing shingles. I can't say that we find too many piles of roofing shingles anymore. We actually don't find too many piles of tires anymore.
That's all encouraging.
Yeah. What we're told is the amount of illegal dumping is actually decreasing. A lot of that has to do with surveillance cameras and impounding vehicles, though.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah.
The educator in me likes it that you have put it in terms that the learner relates to. They don't want to lose their truck.
Is there any value to this group to knowing specifically who the self-haulers are and who the ICI is? Like, I'm not sure why we separate the groups in the first place. And I'm glad you guys are saying sometimes you don't know which one is which, because I'm not always sure. But is that something we need to worry about as a subcommittee or not?
Well,
yeah, I think it makes sense to keep them separated.
So ICI, I mean, the way that they broke them down was sectors that you can impact. You can have the same material, like I use an example of aluminum can. You can have an aluminum can come out of a residential property.
Right.
You can have it come out of a business. You can have it come out of a factory. You can have it come out of self-haul. The way that you attack that and get recovery of that is going to be different based upon that sector, even though it's the same material. So I believe that the intent of the people that formulated the study was that you put these things in certain categories, that you have like-minded techniques or processes or programs to get the recovery that you need.
Okay. I mean, that's clear. It's very clear on residential. That's why there's a whole separate subcommittee and us. I'm just trying to get in my head what's the difference between our two subgroups and how we handle them. And I don't know if it would be useful. I mean, apparently there is. I can see that. But would it be useful to list, like, here's an example of a dozen self-hauls, and here's an example of all the ICIs that we work with, or something? Or that be?
Well, ICI is everybody. Yeah, ICI is everybody that generates waste, like it's a business and stuff.
Yeah.
And that's where we have licensed haulers that are, they got the front load dumpsters, they got roll off dumpsters, they got curbside cart, and that's what we do. We haul that stuff. Self haul is just a totally different category in that they're not with licensed haulers. You can't track them so much as the way Ked was talking about it. You catch it on the backside, and you don't regulate them. So self-haul, it's not a huge category. But I can't go out and put my finger on all the self-haul people. So you have to work your regulations more at the site where they're taking it to. Whereas a waste hauler, they can pick up things that are separated and take it to the right facility. So I don't know if I'm doing an adequate job of explaining the difference, but I think that I can name 1,000 companies when it comes to ICI. It's a category.
Right.
So Greg, on the self-haul stuff, the way I like to look at it or think about it is the education, enforcement, ordinances, all that stuff is more geared towards the facility that's going to be accepting that material. Because like Pete said, it could come from a homeowner, it could come from a business, it could come from a company. It doesn't matter where it's coming from because it's all small volume, generators. And anything we're going to target as far as education or whatever that may be is going to be targeted to the facility that's accepting it. Whereas on the ICI side, we're trying to work with the generator who's generating, the recyclables, the trash, the whatever it is, and trying to get them to, separate it or, dispose of it properly. So, the way I look at it is a generator versus a receiver on who we're going to be working with.
Okay. I'm just going to point out too that we're down to about 10 minutes if we're going to really break at 4:15. So do we need
Greg,
to?
I was gonna mention to you, if you go to page 33 of the recommendations in the study, it will show you a breakdown of what ICI and what residential and what self-haul and what C&D is. In other words, it actually puts an X in the category of the recommendations they made for those different entities. So that might help a little bit if you get a chance to take a look at that.
Good. That's page 33 of the.
Page 33 of the recommendations in the study itself.
Got it. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, sure.
Is that it? Just offhand, is that the chart?
That's the chart. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I could probably pull that up. I actually had it in another
You-
presentation.
You had it last week, or, you had it in your presentation on the study, Pete, the one you and Karen did. One other thing, Greg, 4 of us were on that committee that we reviewed the minutes of, and we do have, a motion and a second. If the staff provides us with information that could potentially change that, we would need to review that and make some decision to see if COVID or something shifted it. But I thought Cad and Sarah Lynn did a pretty good job of getting to the priorities during that January meeting last year.
Good.
So
Okay.
we
Thank
were
you. I
making
don't remember, but thank you.
Yeah, you did, and we were making progress, I think, to get to a priority. Now, if new information is presented that forces us to discuss that, I think that's a good thing. But I do think we were heading the right direction on, let's identify, these 4 strategic areas. And
Okay.
that was, of course, myself, Matt, Sarah Lynn, and Ked. We were all on that committee. I know you weren't, Greg. That's why I was just bringing that up.
I appreciate it. So
Yeah.
should we move on to those 4 items? Or
Well, I mean, I think, we can still review that in between now and our next meeting. But, I think we've got a lot to concentrate on, and I think if we take them 1 or 2 at a time, we'll make more progress.
Okay. Pete,
Brian,
you
is
want-
this the chart?
That's it, Pete.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah, and you can see those are divided separately by the categories that Greg's
Sorry.
referring to.
Well, I could see, yeah.
Yeah, it's there. So you got
There you go.
all the individual strategies. Residential has the check mark, ICI,
Yeah.
self-haul, and C&D.
Right. Okay.
And then you have a little bit down here as far as the terms and definitions. If you guys can see my cursor.
Yep, it's a good picture at a glance.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's a clever graphic.
Yeah, I do too. Those were the recommendations that the consultants focused on.
Right.
Right. So where do we want to focus on the next 6 minutes or so?
Diane, if you want to pull back the,
Go back the shorter.
the impact matrix.
Yeah. Well,
I'm getting there. I'm sorry.
while she's doing that, when it does come up, what do we want to pick, prioritize, or what's our next step?
Well, Greg, where we left that during the last meeting, which we discussed just briefly about 10 minutes ago, was we voted to direct staff to find out what the self-haul material people accept so that we could understand, you know, and Pete was referring to it about the 4 categories at the Waste Reduction Center and where do we go with that? Where do we go with, they did provide a list of the facilities. That was the alternate disposals for bulky waste. Pete, was your title of that. That was Waste Management of Kentucky, Rumpke, Republic, tire shredding on Ulrich Avenue, Smith Creek, Ralph Avenue, and River Road Shingles. Those were the 7 that we'd identified during previous meetings that you did provide to us.
Yeah, you know, and there's more. There's ICI, Innovative Crushing and Aggregate
Yeah,
for concrete.
and we can add those.
Mhm.
That list was because, or I don't think it was included because people normally can't bring concrete to the Waste Reduction Center, so it wasn't included on that website.
You're talking
But
about
we
like
can certainly-
individuals or small haulers, Karen?
Well, the list from that website was just alternative places since the Waste Reduction Center was closed.
Got
So
it.
we could add, for the list concerning this, we could add places like the Innovative Crushing, the list. It was just a start.
Gotcha.
Clarifying question. Each of the places, the 7 places that Brian just listed, they're all regulated, so we can tell them they have to do this, right?
Well, we would have to, if we're going to ask them to do something different than what there is in ordinance now, obviously we would have to pass ordinance or regulation to require it.
Yeah, I'm using the royal we, I suppose, here.
Okay.
There's my
Yeah,
friend.
and keep in mind that the self-haul requirement here is more towards making sure that there's options for recovery at disposal facilities. So, and you know, that's like the landfill, having to have places where people can drop off stuff that can be recovered. Which I think that they have some of that now, so.
So I just want to reinforce that I don't have a big investment in what we do. I have an investment in let's do something, and it might as well be whatever's the most helpful to staff.
I think you guys will be pretty happy with some of the things that we're doing. Whether or not we can scale it up to countywide is the next question.
So you're doing it mostly in the old city district?
It depends upon what the initiative is.
Yeah.
So Pete, before we go, do I need to formally make a motion to ask the staff to give us a better readout and do some research on the self-haul facilities?
Sure.
All right, then I'll make a motion to ask that the staff positions kind of give us an itemized list of what's been done in the past year as related to these 6 topics, and to further provide some research as to which facilities in the county accept self-hauled materials and what separation requirements, if any, that they have, or what materials they accept.
Good.
Would that be
Second.
before the next meeting or by the next meeting?
Whenever they get it done, because the research on the self-haul may take a little while.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion in front of us. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is carried. Diane, were you able to get that down well enough, or whoever's recording it?
I think so. If not, I can just listen again.
Yeah, or just ask Ed directly at this. Okay.
One other thing that I would recommend is that maybe we ask at the full committee that staff do a presentation on the efforts that we have going on right now and how they relate to the recommendations. So I think that, you know, the other committee could benefit from hearing about what we're doing in relation to some of the study recommendations. So if we can bring that up during the full committee meeting, that would be great.
Sounds good. All right, given the fact that it's about 4:15, do we need to pull the agenda up? Is there anything else we want to cover? We've discussed the impact matrix, and I think we've just discussed next steps. Is that true?
Yep.
Okay. Is there any public input?
I don't think so.
Hearing none, I would just point out that the next meeting is March 17th. It's also a Wednesday, I assume, at the same time, same place. Is there any other questions or anything anybody want to ask? If not, does somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn for 15 minutes. See y'all soon.
Second.
Okay. See y'all in a little bit. Go do whatever
The
you gotta
water
do.
pressure may drop across town right now.
Right. Go do whatever you got to do. Thank you, everyone, for the meeting, and we'll see you in a bit.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
In show. Stop.
Just stop the recording.